When you go to visit another country or to live there for a while, just as when people come here, you'll find that the language barrier is quite a difficult barrier at first, and then you get over it. Well, Rob and Mary Beth told me that one of the important things they learned about having international guests in their home was that during the early months, maybe even 6 months of their stay here, games were difficult if they didn't consider that language might get in the way. And so they started getting games like Jenga, I suppose dominoes, maybe you can think of things where not much language is required. And in that way, they were able to build relationships with these guests and to enjoy each other. So keep that in mind, and maybe you'll put it to use one day when you go overseas or you entertain people here from another country. Today we have Mary Beth, Rob's wife, with us. Mary Beth, when you look back on all those international guests that you had at your house over the years, what did you notice about forks?
They use them a little differently than we do. In fact, the Asian students, the Chinese and Japanese, would actually prefer their chopsticks.
In Latin America, it wouldn't be unusual to see people using tortillas like spoons and forks. You know, they'll tear off a piece of a tortilla and dip it into soup or rice. Did you see anybody eating in ways that were different than we're used to seeing?
Yes, they would put their rice in a small bowl and bring it close to their mouth when they were eating the chopsticks. And just, bring the chopsticks very quickly from the bowl that was close by up to their mouth.
In the U.S., we have plenty of everything. That's the big difference, right? I mean, these students that come over, you have students in your home who are used to modern things. But for instance, if you were to go into their store, they might have 3 kinds of radios. You go into our stores, we'd have maybe 20 radios.
I'm thinking about the grocery stores, Max, how different the students were than we were when they go in the grocery store. They'd never seen so much variety. And so we'd go in the front door of the store. They wouldn't have a methodical way of going down the aisles. It was just like there was so much there. They just wanted to run around crazy and look at things.
Like kids in a toy store.
I'm thinking about a Lithuanian student we knew. I didn't notice Saul having quite the same reaction as the Chinese. He didn't want to just fly through the store and look at things. But when we bought coffee, I was really shocked because he wanted to buy the ground coffee like we would in the can or the plastic container now, and he didn't have a coffee percolator. I said, well, how are you going to make this? He said, I'm going to put it in water and boil it. I said, well, you want instant coffee then? He said, no, we put it in water and boil it. And I found out later from my mother that that's what her Lithuanian mother-in-law did. They don't use a drip coffee maker like we would. Instead, they actually boil the coffee grounds in the water, and then you pour the coffee off. But you get some of those chewy grounds in your cup, too.
You don't drink all the way to the bottom of the cup.
What did you think about the senses of humor of your students? Rob's told us his angle on this. Not everybody seems very funny if you're not used to where they come from.
I don't remember too many of them having a very good sense of humor. But the Asian students, the Chinese and Japanese, were very polite. So if they understood it was supposed to be funny, they would laugh.
Even if they didn't understand.
Right. Even if they didn't understand, they would laugh.
So you couldn't lose when you told them a joke.
Right.
Okay, Rob, give it your best shot. Convince these students to take international students into their homes and bring the world right into the middle of their lives.
Okay, I'll give it my best shot. That's just exactly what it is. And you don't have to spend a lot of money. You don't have to go to another country. You bring a country to you, and you learn all about it in more depth than you would if you just went there and hit the big tourist spots. You get to find out what these people experience from the inside, from day to day. You can ask them all kinds of questions, and when you've been with them long enough, they'll answer them. They'll tell you all the inside stuff about what it's like to live under that government, to live with those kind of parents and that kind of family structure, the whole thing, you've got it.
But is it going to be hard to have these students in your home? I mean, it changes things, doesn't it?
It changes things. You'd have to make some adjustments, but no more usually than you would if you had some other American student in the home. I guess the big difficulty there, the big difference then would be communication. You have to just know ahead of time that there's going to be some bad communication, and when you thought you were going to pick up the student, they misunderstood and they're not there, or they have a different sense of time than we do, or something like that. They're not going to do what you expect them to do because they didn't understand to begin with, and they were too polite to tell you that they didn't understand. You come in knowing that's going to happen, but then there's all these good things that more than make up for it.
Now, it must be important to know that everybody around the world does not respond to your frustration the same. Some might just be stricken with grief that they did something that made you frustrated, and others, well, they may not care too much. They may not be too bothered by it.
Right, and I think we saw that with more with the Middle Eastern students, that they were not going to be too upset if I was upset, and maybe that's just as well. More power to them.
But other people would be very sad, and they just feel terrible if you were frustrated. I mean, this is something Americans need to know when they bring guests into their homes.
Yeah, the Japanese were like that they would wanted to do everything exactly the way we wanted it done. The language barrier was the main problem, that it wasn't going as well and smoothly as they had hoped.
And finally, Rob, we all hear on the news all the time about different religions around the world. Lots of people are at war over religious views, or people are maybe not at war, but they're enemies and they're saying terrible things about each other. How can our students bring somebody into the home and have a really good international experience with them without running into problems over the differences in their religions?
I don't see that there should be any problem as long as you're not trying to push your religion on that student, and I think very few people would want to do that. What you do get out of it is when you've had the student long enough and are able to freely talk about all kinds of things, then you get, like I was talking about, the inside view of that other country's government, or you get the inside view of that other person's religion too. Not what you read in some book about what it is to be Islamic or Confucianism or whatever like that, but what it's really like from day to day. What it was like when they were kids, when they celebrated all the celebrations having to do with Taoism or Confucianism or whatever, and what it meant in the family, what that religion meant to them. The ancestor worship in Japan and so forth.
So this would be different than what we're all hearing on the news. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, the news emphasizes people wanting to kill each other over it. But what you can get out of this is their equivalent of Thanksgiving, their equivalent of Christmas, all the happy stuff having to do with their religions.
That isn't necessarily about conflict.
Right, not at all. It's about closeness. It's about family and community.
We don't need to be afraid to bring in international students because their religions are going to be different.
Not at all. And I want to say that the opposite of what I was just saying is that you can feel free to freely explain all about, say, you're a Christian, all about Christianity to them, and they just...
Because you're a Christian. This is why you're saying this.
Yes, because I am a Christian, and we've had students from China who, because of being raised in communism and the Mao era, some of them, they knew nothing about Christianity, had never so much as seen a Bible, let alone read a page of it, and would ask questions such as, well, who was Jesus? How did he die? What was that all about? What is the soul? They would ask. It really puts you on your toes to try to answer questions like that, but from people who are just for the sake of rounding out their minds needed to know even what Christianity is. We have run into that.
Well, you seem like you recommend this, but you would say that a person has to have the right attitude in order to be able to enjoy international students.
Yeah, that's right. And Mary Beth and I just really do enjoy them. We just have a great time with them.
What should be our attitude when we bring a person into our home from other countries?
To be humble and not expect them to be like us, to just know ahead of time that there's going to be some strange differences and to enjoy those strange differences.